Hi everyone, welcome again. So till now we have seen how to configure Spring Beans, different attributes of beans, and we have treated beans in isolation till now. But in this video we will see how to set up the dependencies and how to tell Spring that these beans are dependent so that Spring can wire them together. So let's start. Here we have three classes: user DAO, which is responsible for talking to a database. So we are not connecting to the database, but it's just playing that role. Then we have user service, which is playing the role of service layer to get the request and then to hit the user DAO. And request handler is kind of the entry point of application. So it has the handle method, which will actually start the execution of request. And then we have the runner class, which has a main method which initializes the application context. In the main method, we get the object of request handler from the context, and then we call the handle method of the request handler. Now, what we want to do is from the main method, we want to call the request handler. That's what we are doing here. Then from the request handler, we want to call the user service. And from the user service, we want to call the user DAO. So if we go to the request handler here, we want to call the user service from handle method, which is not happening as of now, but this is something that we want to do. So let's see how to call user service from request handler. To do that, we can do something like this. We can create a new object of user service here like this, and then we can call service dot the method of and can pass the a random integer. So this is we can do, this is fine. But if we do that, if we create the object using new keyword, then we are not using the capabilities of Spring. So we won't be creating the object using the new keyword, but we'll just define the dependency and we'll ask Spring to wire them together. To do that, what we can do, the simplest way is we declare a variable user service, we name it, let's say service. Now in the handle method, we can call this service.getUser, the method of the service class, but we have not initialized the user service yet. To do that, we use the annotation @autowired. Now @autowired annotation is used to define a dependency so that Spring can inject them. And this is the simplest way to inject a dependency. If we use the autowired annotation in this way, what will happen when we run the program, the IOC container will see that it has to instantiate request handler, but it will see that it has a property which is annotated with autowired, and it means that request handler class is dependent on user service class. So what IOC container will do, it will instantiate user service and inject that object to the request handler so that request handler has access to user service object. And that is the only thing that we need to do. Now let's go to the user service class, because from the user service we have to call the user DAO. So we will do the same thing with user DAO. We will define a reference variable of type user DAO. Let's name it user DAO and use the autowired annotation here. Now at runtime, Spring container should initialize and inject user service to request handler and user DAO to user service. Now that everything is set up, let's run the program. So here we see it says that handling request because we called the handle method. So we see this log message on the console. Then from here we called service.getUser. So if we go to the service.getUser, we see that fetching user with ID equals to the ID that we passed. But we don't see anything related to user DAO because we haven't called the method on the user DAO. So let's do that. User DAO dot fetch user by ID and pass the same ID. Okay, let's change the data type here and run the same program again. And this time we see the message from user DAO as well. So we saw how can we inject the dependencies using @autowired without using the new keyword. So in this case, Spring Container IOC container is scanning the classes, finding the dependencies, creating the new objects, and injecting them where they are needed. So that's how we use @autowired annotation. But is it the only way to use the autowired annotation? There are other ways we can use the autowired annotation. This is just the one way. Now let me comment it and see, and let's see what's the other way to use the @autowired annotation. So what we can do, we may have a constructor of user service like this. We have commented the autowired, but we still need the reference variable of type user DAO. And we may be asking the dependency via constructor. So this is called constructor injection. So we are saying to Spring Container that I have this constructor and use this constructor to inject the dependency. And then we can use the same annotation on the constructor. This is called the constructor injection. So what Spring Container will do when it instantiates the user service, it will check that the class has a constructor which is annotated. So it will create the user DAO and inject this dependency using the constructor. Let's verify the output, and we should not see any change. And we see the same output, which is fine. Now this is the constructor injection. There is one more way to do the same, and which is called the setter injection. To do that, we will create the setter methods and we will annotate the setter methods using @autowired. So let's leave it as it is and we'll change another class, request handler. We can comment the autowired, which is annotating the property. Instead, let's create the getters and setters. And once we have the setter, we can annotate the setter @autowired. Like this. So if we are using this setter injection and annotating the setter method properly, then Spring will be able to inject the dependency using the setter method. This is called the setter injection. Running the same program again will give the same output because it's only the way that we are injecting the dependencies. So we see the same output, which means Spring is still able to inject the dependencies. So these are the main ways to use the auto-wired annotation, to use it on the property directly, or to use the auto-wired annotation on a constructor, which is the constructor injection, or to use it with setter method, which is the setter injection. That's it for now on the auto-wiring using @autowired annotation. Thanks for watching.